Hey friends, today I would like to talk a little bit about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But first, let's talk about my friend Sarah. Sarah, names changed to protect the guilty, is a beautiful, smart young woman. She is married to Jeff, who is neither beautiful nor smart. Jeff has male pattern baldness, but he's decided to lean into it by having a long, stringy ponytail that starts here, okay? Jeff recently decided to go alternative and get a tattoo. He got a tattoo of a pineapple and he put it on his calf. Jeff has lots of opinions about things, but Jeff doesn't read much, and so he doesn't realize that other people have already had these opinions and argued them more poetically, eloquently, and rationally than he could ever hope to do. Sarah loves him. Here's my point. Religion is like another person's marriage, okay? Sometimes you look at a person's religion and you're like, I don't know how that person could possibly be happy or fulfilled in that religion, okay? And it's similar to another person's marriage. You look at the marriage and you're like, how can that guy be with her? Or how can she be with him? The point is, it's none of your business. I found over the years, as I've gone deeper and deeper into Zen practice, that what I get from my Zen jam is what others get from their Muslim jam, their Christian jam, their Catholic jam, their Jewish jam, and that it's really not good to judge other people's religious life. That said, caveats out of the way, it's time to talk about Jesus. Now, I'm going to I want to look at the Jesus figure from a slightly unorthodox angle. If this is the sort of thing that irritates you or triggers you, if you feel like I'm talking about something that's very personal to you, like as if I were judging your marriage, just hit like, hit subscribe, get out of here and don't watch this video, because we're going to go a little bit sideways on the Jesus figure today. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Cut to the Mount Baldy Zen Center. It's winter. It's December 6th. I'm sitting in the sanzen waiting room on a chair much like this one. Sanzen waiting room is where you wait to go into sanzen, which is koan practice with your teacher. So there's a bell in front of me, and I'm holding a hammer, wooden hammer, and I'm listening for the tinkle of my teacher's handbell, which he's going to shake when the monk he is meeting with currently has failed his koan, and my teacher is ringing him out. So I'm waiting, and I'm going to put my hand in gasho. I'm going to hit the bell 3 times, ding ding, no, twice, ding ding, and then I'm going to run in to do my koan practice, right? December 6th, by the way, which you will remember was the day, is my birthday. And I'm turning 33 years old that day. I'm actually a few hours from being exactly 33 years old. And as I sat on that chair, I realized I'm exactly the age that Jesus Christ was when he died. And then I heard the tinkling of my teacher's bell. And I had this image of his ancient 101-year-old hand, wrinkled, beautiful, those blue veins that a really old person gets on their hand. And his skin is so smooth. And I had an image of his hand, his 101-year-old hand. Something occurred to me when I heard that bell, when I was sitting in that chair, that has stuck with me my entire life since. A payload of insight was delivered to me that I've been unpacking ever since. Jesus Christ died when he was 33. He never had a chance to get old, to become old wise. Frankly, the young are never really wise. They're sometimes accidentally insightful, or they've learned things, but from my experience with a very, very, very old Zen teacher, the wisdom of old age is just plain different. It's the difference between a clock that's made now, today, and an antique, a beautiful, old, precious thing. They're different. And the wisdom of old age is different than, in my experience, the energy and the insight and the knowledge and the enthusiasm and the romanticism of young people. And as I sat there in that chair, I realized I'm exactly as old as Christ, and I felt so grateful that I could keep going forward, that I could meet with an ancient person who was a lineage holder in a very ancient tradition, and I could sort of soak in his mellow, deep, relaxed, spacious wisdom. And I thought, this is a problem. The fact that the entire Western tradition, Western civilization, is arguably founded upon the 33-year-old shoulders of a relatively, I don't want to say callow, but time-wise, young spiritual figure. And that means something. That has implications. Jesus never got a chance to get older, to get perspective, to ripen in a certain way, to let certain hard-charging, romantic, like self-sacrificial energies, those sorts of dramatic and melodramatic storylines that are so, remember what you were like when you were 33 years old? You were a drama queen. And I thought to myself, it matters. It matters, and it says something that the Western tradition that we are still in today was founded by someone who was the exact same age that I was when I was sitting in that chair getting ready to go see my teacher, to give him an answer to my koan and to fail at that koan. Not only did Christ die when he was young, he died tragically. And whenever you have a young, important person who dies tragically, you get a great romantic myth that gets built up around these people. I give you Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, the Amy one. Na 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 na, I said no, I forget her name now, Rehab, no, that one, okay? All the romantic, the Byronic romantic poets, the sorrows of young Werther, and on it goes. It's the 27 Club, right? From Jim Morrison to Janis Joplin to all these folks I just mentioned. I think, for me, like the complete spiritual picture shows one evolving out of one's youth. not being martyred as a youth and like so forever being trapped in the amber of that stage. Like those pictures of Christ, like trapped in the amber, blood dripping down his face, a crown of thorns on his head. To found a spiritual tradition on the message and the meaning that is conveyed by the image of a cross where a man was crucified is to put the taste of violence into people's mouths. It's like to put a tiny little drop of blood on the tongue of everyone who takes their vows in that tradition. Somehow it's like MMA religion or something. You know, I have this reel in my head going about Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ movie, which is basically like a 2-hour spiritual snuff film. Okay, all right. Okay, I have said too much. I've said too much. I haven't said enough. Remember that song by R.E.M.? That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight, losing my religion. My opinion, by the way, is that the sacred and the profane are two sides of the same coin. And when you speak in a very conscious, directed, focused, profane way, it's actually a technique for invoking the divine. So, you know, if you're Christian and you're offended, I'm even offended by what I just said. I'm offended by it. But again, I feel like to be profane is to actually, by the principle of contrasts, it's to evoke and clarify the principle of the sacred. And I grew up Catholic. I grew up praying on my hands and knees every single day. We would say the rosary in my house, which is like it's about a half hour, 40 minutes, depending on how fast you say them. Prayer beads where you say the rosary. We went to Mass every Sunday. It was Latin Mass, so it was a very traditional, conservative Mass. I evoke these provocative images of Christ with love and respect. I hit a really bad stretch about halfway through my time at the Zen Buddhist monastery. I've talked about this before. I became the head monk when I wasn't ready for the job. And I had an older, more experienced, profoundly stubborn peer named Chigo, who took it upon himself to transform the 2,600-year tradition of monastic Buddhism to his own personal liking. And in the process, he was ruining everything that had brought me to the monastery in the first place. And as the head monk, it was my job to push back and put him in his place. And I didn't have the strength to do that. When I go back and I look at my journals from that time, they are the ravings of a madman. I mean, I remember there was just like one page where I was just like over and over and over, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy, I hate this guy. I mean, I literally just wrote it for pages and pages and pages. It was a really hard time. It was a really hard time. It's hard to describe. Like, you get yourself in way over your head and there doesn't seem to be any way out. I wasn't going to leave the monastery. The only way out was through. And it was in those moments that I think that Spirit of Christ helped me. The Spirit of Christ that I was taught when I was young. this man, this flicker of divine fire captured in flesh and made to suffer the way that we are made to suffer. Something about that I think resonated with me. It was an archetype that spoke to me during that time. And I would pray back in my cabin at the end of a long, terrible day at the Zen Buddhist monastery. I would pray my Our Father, my Hail Mary, my Glory Be. Our Father who art in heaven, Hail Mary, full of grace. I remember this. It's funny to me now because I don't say those prayers anymore. When I pray now, I just say the help prayer. I say the help prayer and the gratitude prayer, and that's it. Thank you and help. Thank you and help. Those are the only prayers I say now. But when I was a monk, I was invoking this spiritual equipment that was bequeathed to me by my mother when I was very young. And I was almost invoking it as a rebellion against the cold Buddhist Zen tradition that was hauled across the Pacific Ocean from Kyoto by my Japanese teacher. And one day I went into sanzen with my teacher, Joshu Suzaki Roshi. And it was a really bad day, and I had been saying my Our Fathers and my Hail Marys in the Zendo. And my teacher sometimes could read minds. Do with this what you will. I don't know. Maybe it was chance. In any event, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you born with Christ's story." And I was like, "Yeah, I was raised Catholic, yeah." And he's like, "Oh, Jesus up on cross." Okay, if you're easily offended, don't watch this. He said, "Oh, Jesus up on cross, dead, like stuck pig. Up on cross, dying, like stuck pig." He said, "Christians keep Jesus up on cross, like stuck pig, suffering." And he actually made this face. He goes, suffering. They keep Jesus up on cross forever, suffering. He said, "Not good." And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, there is no true religion without resurrection. And it was at that point that a light bulb went off, and I realized how beautiful the Christian story actually is, how human it is. They talk about the Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ, how human the story of his suffering is, and how profound and deep the tradition actually is. What I realized then was that the teachings, the principles, and the practices that my Zen master had been trying to get across are very similar to the message that you can take away from the death of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. You can look at that night. What is it? It's Friday night, Jesus dies. Saturday, he's chilling in the grave. And Sunday, he resurrects, right? And when my teacher said there is no true religion without resurrection, he was pointing out how perhaps a sand trap that you can get stuck in is the romanticizing of your own suffering, the drama, the demonizing of your enemies. Who was the Roman soldier who stuck the spear into Christ's side. And then there was that Pontius Pilate who sent him to his death. And what about those chosen people who did not vote to free Jesus? And on it goes. We can get stuck in the storyline around suffering. The suffering of ourselves, the suffering of our people, the suffering of humans here on this planet, and we can start to look for evil enemies, those who are manifesting the principles and the powers of Satan, Lucifer, those who are on the side of evil. I have a friend who keeps sending me Alex Jones videos, and you get a lot of talk about evil and the powers of darkness and whatnot in conspiratorial thinking. And a lot of that thinking can be traced back to bad ideas, in my opinion. And I think what Roshi was saying is, die upon your cross. The sooner, the better. Let the suffering self die. You die into God, right? You die into God. You die completely. And then a divine self is born or is resurrected. Now, in Zen, we strip away all the drama, all the storyline, all the color, all the shape, all the size. You know what Zen calligraphy looks like. It's not like the Sistine Chapel. It's not the smooth marble flesh of Mary, the Virgin, holding her dying son, aka Michelangelo's The Pieta, which is the single greatest sculpture in the history of the human race, right? It's a circle done in a fraction of an instant by a Zen master on a white piece of paper. And so that's it, right? It's simple. It strips away the everything. And practice-wise, in a monastery, you just sit and do a simple activity. That's your prayer. That's your cross. That's your teleology, is an instantaneous moment, not a 10,000-year timeline. And what happens is your suffering self arises like Christ's when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's screaming at Jesus. Oh, how I used to scream at God, my God, when I was in the meditation hall at 3 o'clock in the morning on day 5 of a retreat. I'm exhausted. It's freezing outside. I'm wet. My fucking socks are wet, right? And I'm screaming at my God. I'm screaming at whatever it was that put me on this planet in this suffering body and this painful mind, right? Just like Christ on Gethsemane. And the Buddhist Zen teaching suggests that you don't hang on to that. Don't cling to it. Don't create another story on top of the pain, you know, but rather surrender, manifest death, and then the rebirth happens on its own, just like Christ's birth. Like, you can't make the resurrection happen. You just have to die completely. And what my teacher taught was the way that you die is by making relationships. So you can't kill yourself. You have to let something slay your ego. So that means you have to be in complete relationship in every given moment. So you have to do the activity that you're doing completely. What I'm trying to say is just when you're meditating, you're dying into that breath. You're not just sitting there helplessly falling through like vast, horrible hellfire with like no ground beneath your feet and no heaven above your head, like just falling in yourself. You've got a ground beneath you. You're sitting on a cushion. Sit on it. Give yourself to it. Get out of your head and into the moment through an activity. Whatever activity you're doing in the moment. This is the teaching of old wise people. Sit down, shut up, have a cup of tea with me. Again and again and again, people would come into my teacher's chambers freaking out. My wife is dying, she's sick. I've got cancer. I'm sorry, Roshi, I'm so sad, you know. And Roshi would hand them a cup of tea. Oh, tea, hot. Your fingers okay? No, sit up, you know. He would pull them back into the moment, back into their body. Hold tea, yeah, hold tea. There's a very specific way of holding a teacup, you know. You hold it with integrity. You manifest posture with integrity. Your butt connected to the ground, your feet on the earth, your lungs inhaling and exhaling. You're always in relationship here and now in this moment. So, you know, the principles that are gotten across in this great, big, slightly melodramatic story of Christ's death and resurrection are the principles I hold dearly as a Zen practitioner, except in a much more simple way. We don't need to scream out in our own personal private gardens of Gethsemane and then carry our cross through the streets, stick it into Calgary, and get crucified on it. You can preempt all that by getting out of your head, which is to say the place where suffering happens, and into relationship with your surroundings. And you die into the activity of holding a book. It's always physical for me because I get stuck in my head. So the way I come out of hell, out of my own personal private Gethsemane, off my cross, is through my sensorium, through my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth, and my fingers and my feet, my skin. This organ, skin is an organ, it touches, right? Connection. And then you're one with your surroundings and the ego dies, like Christ finally dying on that cross. And when the ego dies, you've lost yourself. And that's when you're one with God. That's when you are God, like Christ and God are one. You are God. You are the absolute. You are not separate from the cosmos. But then, of course, what happens? Well, you remember yourself again. Then you're reborn. Somehow, when you've forgotten yourself, from that condition of shunyata, zero, true love, a new self is born and a new world is born along with you. And you're ready to live your life again. You've been blessed by God. Out there somewhere, your brain has disappeared, dissolved, gone to God, and come back. And this happens, in Buddhism, it's said that it happens 80,000 times a second, I think is the number. It's just a number that they throw out there. But there you go. Listen, friends, I got to go shoot my compatriot Sarah an email and tell her to divorce that guy with the pineapple on his calf. That guy with the stringy ponytail that accentuates his male pattern baldness. How could she be married to that guy? No, that's not how you behave towards other people's marriages or other people's religions, all right? Listen, if you want to support the blasphemy that goes on here at Zen Confidential, you can go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. You can also make a one-time or many-time donation through PayPal. There is a link in the video description below. Listen, I want to say thank you to my patrons. I've gotten some new patrons lately. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your support makes this possible and connects an interesting group of people from around the world that I am so grateful for. People who, people who are independent in a lot of ways. Independent. Nobody signs up to this for Patreon, my Patreon, who like is really devoted to some guru or something. It's usually people who are thinking for themselves and want a community of people who are thinking for themselves. And I don't know, God bless the internet for making all this possible. Yeah, that's all. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.